That night, Helena watched the man she'd divorced 3 years ago burn in front of 200 children dressed as ghosts and witches, and the text on her phone said, "Let him die, and this town gets 15 million. She was 20 minutes into her ER shift when the sirens started. The Pumpkin Festival parade float, billionaire CEO Marcelo Duarte standing on top, waving at the crowd, exploded into flames on the covered bridge. By the time the ambulance doors slammed open, Helena's hands were already reaching for gloves she didn't want to put on. Because the man on that gurney? Smoke in his lungs, burns covering his arms, his Fricks Foods cufflinks melted into his wrists, missed their son's last 18 months of life. The man she'd sworn she'd never save again. And then her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times. You save him, you lose everything. Check the invoice. Someone wanted this fire. Let him die. Ricks shuts down. 15 million rebuilds this town. Your choice, doctor. Helena stared at the messages, then at Marcelo's face. Soot-streaked, unconscious, his oxygen levels dropping. 10 minutes until she'd have to intubate. 10 minutes to decide if she was going to fight for the man who'd broken her heart, or let a conspiracy bury him. Because someone was watching. Someone knew her schedule, and someone believed she'd choose revenge over saving a life. They were wrong. Or were they? Sleepy Hollow's Pumpkin Festival always smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke, but tonight the smoke carried something sharper, burning plastic, melted wiring, the acrid tang of chemical accelerant. Dr. Helena Costa stood behind the ER triage desk at Hollow Valley Medical Center, watching parents rush through the automatic doors with crying kids still in their costumes. A princess with a scraped knee, a vampire with an asthma flare triggered by smoke, a tiny zombie who dropped his candy bucket and refused to let the nurse check his vitals until someone retrieved it. Helena's hands moved on autopilot, blood pressure cuff, stethoscope, pen light, but her mind kept replaying the orange flash she'd seen from the hospital parking lot 20 minutes earlier. The covered bridge had been lit with jack-o'-lanterns when the Ricks Foods parade float rolled through. Then sparks, then flames crawling up the papier-mâché pumpkin tower like something alive, at the ER entrance before the first ambulance siren split the October air. Now her attending physician, Dr. Rahman, appeared beside her with a clipboard. Mass casualty protocol, smoke inhalation, minor burns, possible crush injuries from the stampede. We've got 6 ambulances inbound. He paused, glancing at the security monitor. The float belonged to Ricks Food. CEO was riding on top when it went up. Helena's chest tightened. Marcelo. The first ambulance bay doors slammed open, and paramedics wheeled in a man on a gurney, his tailored suit jacket scorched black at the sleeves, his face streaked with soot. Helena recognized the cufflinks before she recognized his face. Platinum squares engraved with the Ricks Foods logo, a gift from his late father. Marcelo Duarte, 41 years old. Billionaire CEO, her ex-husband, father of her 9-year-old son, though Marcelo hadn't seen Lucas in 18 months. Second-degree burns on both forearms, the paramedic rattled off. Smoke inhalation, oxygen sat at 89%, BP 140 over 90. He was trapped under the collapsed pumpkin structure for 4 minutes before firefighters pulled him out. Helena stepped forward, her training overriding the way her pulse hammered in her ears. Get him into base. I need a chest x-ray, arterial blood gas, and start him on high-flow oxygen. Move. She didn't look at his face as they transferred him to the ER bed. She couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she focused on his hands. Blistered palms, fingertips raw where he'd tried to claw through melted fabric. Her gloves snapped on with practiced precision. Mr. Duarte, can you hear me? His eyes opened, dark brown, bloodshot from smoke, and locked onto hers. Recognition flickered. His voice came out in a rasp. Helena? Don't talk. Your airway's compromised. She shone a penlight into his pupils, equal and reactive. Good. She pressed her stethoscope to his chest, listening for the telltale crackle of fluid or the wheeze of narrowing bronchi. His breathing was labored but not critical. Not yet. We're going to get you stable and transfer you to the burn unit at Metro General. Do you understand? He nodded, then coughed, a harsh, wet sound that made her glance at the oxygen monitor. 86, dropping. Prep for intubation, she called to the nurse. If his SATs don't come up in the next 10 minutes, we're securing his airway. Marcelo's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but deliberate. Helena, it wasn't an accident. She froze. What? The float. Another cough, deeper. Electrical panel. Someone tampered. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, but it buzzed again, then another. She pulled back from Marcelo's grip and glanced at the screen. Unknown number. You save him, you lose everything. Unknown number. Check the invoice. Compartment B7. Wiring job. Ghost contractor. Unknown number. Let him die. Rix shuts down. Land sells. 15 neomotors to rebuild the rec center. Your choice. Helena's blood went cold. She looked up at Marcelo, his eyes half closed now, oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. Then at her phone. Then at Dr. Rahman, who was barking orders to the trauma team across the hall. Someone wanted Marcelo dead, and they thought Helena might help. Helena shoved her phone into her lab coat pocket and turned to the charge nurse. I need the incident report from the fire department. Every detail, origin point, accelerant traces, witness statements, and pull the maintenance records for that parade float. The nurse blinked. Doctor, we're in the middle of now. She moved back to Marcelo's bedside. His oxygen sat had climbed to 91%. Not great, but stable enough to delay intubation. She adjusted the flow rate and leaned close. Marcelo, who knew about the electrical panel? His eyes opened again, sharper this time. Contractor, hired by my VP of Operations, Ed Salazar. He paused to breathe. 3 weeks ago, upgrade the float's lighting system. Do you have paperwork? Office, filing cabinet, second drawer, yellow. Helena pulled out her phone and scrolled to her contacts. She hadn't called Ed Salazar in 3 years, not since the divorce, but his number was still there, buried under 100 others. She hesitated. If she made this call, she was stepping into something bigger than an ER shift, something that involved conspiracy, arson, maybe even murder. She thought of Lucas, asleep at her mother's house with his pumpkin bucket full of candy. She thought of the anonymous texts. She thought of the way Marcelo's hand had trembled when he grabbed her wrist. She pressed call. Ed answered on the second ring, his voice tight. Helena, what's going on? I just heard about Marcelo. Is he? He's alive. Barely. I need you to tell me about the electrical contractor you hired for the float. Silence, then. What contractor? The one who upgraded the lighting system 3 weeks ago. Marcelo said you upgrades. The float was ready to go in August. We didn't touch it after that. Helena's stomach. I don't know. But if someone's been messing with company property, Ed's voice hardened. I'll pull the security logs from the warehouse. Give me 20 minutes. She hung up and looked at Marcelo. His eyes were closed now, his breathing steadier under the oxygen mask. She reached for the sheet and pulled it up to his shoulders. A gesture so automatic she didn't realize she'd done it until her hand stilled on the fabric. 3 years since she'd touched him. 3 years since she'd stood in a courtroom and signed papers that erased 14 years of marriage because he'd chosen the company over their family. Over Lucas. Over her. And now, someone wanted him dead. The charge nurse returned with a tablet. Fire marshal's preliminary origin point was the rear electrical compartment. Witnesses say the spark started near the junction box. Helena scrolled through the document. There, a photo of the charred compartment, wires melted into blackened clumps. And beneath it, a note. Recent wiring modification detected. Non-standard gauge. No permit on file. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You're smarter than this, doctor. Walk away. Let the insurance handle it. No one has to know you could have saved him but didn't. Helena's jaw tightened. She deleted the message and turned to Dr. Rahman. I'm staying with this patient until transfer. He frowned. Helena, you've been on shift for 12 hours. I'm staying. The ER waiting room was chaos. Parents holding ice packs to their children's foreheads. A news crew setting up cameras near the entrance. A reporter with a microphone trying to interview anyone who'd witnessed the float fire. Helena pushed through the double doors and scanned the crowd until she found who she was looking for. Sheriff Tom Brennan, still in his Halloween costume. A half-hearted attempt at a cowboy with a plastic badge and a Stetson that didn't quite fit. "Sheriff." She caught his arm. "I need to talk to you about the Rick's Foods float." He turned, his expression softening when he recognized her. "Helena, I heard Marcelo's here. Is he alive?" But someone tampered with the float's wiring. This wasn't an accident. Brennan's hand moved to his belt where his real badge was clipped beside the plastic one. "You got proof?" She showed him the fire marshal's report on her tablet, then the texts. His face darkened as he read. "Someone's threatening you? Someone wants me to let Marcelo die. They're offering the town $15 million if Rick's Foods shuts down and the land gets sold." Brennan whistled low. But that's also conspiracy to commit murder." He pulled out his own phone. "I'll get a warrant for the warehouse security footage, and I'll trace these texts." A crash echoed from the triage area. Helena spun around to see a man in a black jacket shoving past the security guard, his face red with fury. "Where is he? Where's Duarte?" Brennan stepped forward, hand on his gun. "Sir, you need to calm down." "Calm down? That bastard burned my son's face." The man pulled out his phone, thrusting it toward them. The screen showed a photo of a boy, maybe 10 years old, with a bandage covering half his cheek. He was standing right next to the float when it exploded. Second-degree burns because Duarte was too cheap to hire a real electrician. Helena's heart clenched. She recognized the boy, Jacob Morrison, one of Lucas's classmates. She'd seen him in the ER an hour ago, his mother crying as the nurses applied silver sulfadiazine cream to the blistered skin. "Mr. Morrison, I understand you're upset, but you understand?" He laughed bitterly. "You were married to him. You know what kind of man he is, cuts corners, fires good people. Hires ghost contractors to save a few $1,000 while the rest of us lose our jobs. That's enough." Helena's voice came out sharper than she intended. "Your son is going to be fine. Are superficial and we've already started treatment. But if you want justice, you need to let the sheriff do his job." Morrison stared at her, his anger warring with something else. Exhaustion, maybe, or fear. Finally, he nodded and let Brennan lead him to a chair. Helena returned to the ER, her hands shaking. She scrubbed them at the sink, watching the water run clear, and thought about the man she'd just defended. Marcelo Duarte, the man who'd missed Lucas's 8th birthday because of a board meeting in Tokyo. The man who'd looked her in the eye and said, "I can't be the husband you need and the CEO this company deserves." The man who was lying 20 feet away with burns on his arms and smoke in his lungs because someone wanted him dead. And she'd just lied to protect him. Helena realized Morrison wasn't wrong. Marcelo, but she also realized something else. Whoever sent those texts knew exactly how to manipulate her guilt. If you enjoyed this story so far, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment below. Do you think Helena should save Marcelo, or is the town better off without him? By midnight, Metro General's burn unit had confirmed they could take Marcelo in 2 hours. Helena sat in the staff break room, staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched, her phone open to the texts. She'd forwarded them to Brennan, but the number was a burner, untraceable. No carrier data, no location ping. Whoever sent them knew how to stay invisible. Ed Salazar called at 12:47 a.m. "I found something." Helena straightened. "What?" "The warehouse security footage. Someone accessed the float storage bay 3 weeks ago, October 3rd, 10 p.m. They wore a hoodie and gloves, no face visible. But they used a key. That's the thing. The system shows it was mine. But I was in Boston that night for the Regional Food Expo. I have receipts, hotel check-in logs, everything." Helena's mind raced. "Someone cloned your key card." "Yeah, and they knew exactly when I'd be out of town." Ed's voice dropped. "Helena, this wasn't random. Whoever did this has access to internal schedules, company records, maybe even payroll data. They're not some disgruntled ex-employee, they're still inside. Do you have a list of people with access to that information?" 5 people. Me, Marcelo, the CFO, the head of security, and the executive assistant. Send me their names. Ed hesitated. Helena, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, send me the names. The email arrived 2 minutes. 5 faces she vaguely remembered from company holiday parties before the divorce. Helena opened a new browser tab and started searching. LinkedIn profiles, Instagram accounts, public records. She wasn't a detective, but she'd spent enough time in the ER to recognize patterns. Who showed up where, when, and why. The CFO, Patricia Lim, had posted on Instagram 3 weeks ago. Excited to close the Riverside land deal. Big things coming for Sleepy Hollow. The timestamp, October 2nd, 1 day before the security breach. Helena's pulse quickened. She clicked through Patricia's profile. More photos. More captions. And then, a group shot at a town council meeting. Patricia standing beside a man Helena recognized. Doug Keller, real estate developer. The same Doug Keller who'd been pushing to buy the Hrix Foods property for the last 5 years. The conspiracy wasn't just about destroying the float. It was about destroying the company so the land could be sold. Helena returned to Marcelo's bedside at 1:30 a.m. A transport team was prepping the ambulance, checking equipment, loading supplies. Marcelo was awake now, his oxygen mask replaced with a nasal cannula, his eyes tracking her as she approached. "You look terrible," he said, his voice still rough. "You look worse." A faint smile. "Fair." She pulled a chair close and sat, her elbows on her knees. "Ed sent me the security footage. Someone used his keycard to access the float, and your CFO posted about a land deal the day before." Marcelo's expression shifted, surprise then anger. "Patricia, she's been pushing me to sell the property for months, said the company would make more profit relocating to a logistics hub downstate. And you said no." "Of course I said no. Hrix Foods has been in Sleepy Hollow for 60 years. My grandfather built that factory with his own hands. I'm not selling it so some developer can turn it into condos." Helena the Marcelo she'd divorced had been so focused on profit margins and shareholder value that he'd missed Lucas's school play, but this Marcelo, the one lying in a hospital bed with burns on his arms, sounded like the man she'd married 14 years ago. The one who'd promised to honor his father's legacy. The one who'd believed in something bigger than quarterly earnings, she asked quietly. "About the pressure to sell." "Because you stopped wanting to hear about the company 3 years ago." That stung, but it was true. After the divorce, Helena had cut every tie she could, deleted his number, blocked his assistant's emails, refused to attend any event where he might show up. She'd told herself it was self-preservation, but maybe it was also cowardice. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to tell me the truth." Marcelo nodded. "Did you cut corners on the float? Did you hire a cheap contractor to save money?" His jaw tightened. "No. I authorized a $50,000 budget for the float. Ed managed the project. If someone hired a ghost contractor, they did it behind my back." "Morrison, Jacob's father, said you fired good people and replaced them with cheap labor." "I laid off 12 people last quarter. Board outvoted me. That makes me a bastard, fine. But I didn't hire anyone to sabotage my own parade float." Helena leaned back, exhaling. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But belief required trust, and trust was the thing she'd lost 3 years ago when he'd chosen the company over their family. Her phone buzzed. Another text. Unknown number. "Tick-tock, doctor. Transport leaves in 15 minutes. After that, he's someone else's problem. And this town gets its future back." Helena looked at Marcelo, then at her phone, then at the paramedics loading the gurney into the ambulance bay. 15 minutes. That was all the time she had to decide if she was going to keep fighting for the man who'd broken her heart, or let him go and take the $15 million that could rebuild Sleepy Hollow. Helena realized the anonymous texter was watching the hospital. They knew the transport schedule, which meant they were close. Very close. Helena walked to the hospital parking lot, away from the fluorescent lights and the beeping monitors, and called the one person who might understand what she was feeling. Her mother answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. "Mommy, I need you to check on Lucas, make sure the doors are locked, and don't let anyone in except me or Sheriff Brennan." "Helena, what's wrong?" "Just do it, please." She heard rustling, footsteps, then the click of a deadbolt. "He's fine, sleeping with his pumpkin bucket." "What's going on?" Helena closed her eyes. "Someone's threatening me. They want me to let Marcelo die." A long pause. Then, "And what do you want?" That was the question, wasn't it? Helena looked up at the hospital windows, the glow of the ER bay where Marcelo was being prepped for transport. What did she want? 3 years ago, she would have said freedom, distance, a life where she didn't have to compete with quarterly earnings reports for her husband's attention. But now, standing in a parking lot at 2 a.m. with anonymous texts on her phone and a conspiracy unraveling around her, she wasn't sure anymore. "I want Lucas to have a father," she said quietly. "Even if that father is terrible at showing up." "Then you already know what to do." Helena hung up and returned to the ER. Her team was loading Marcelo onto the ambulance gurney, his IV line secured, his oxygen monitor beeping steadily. She caught Rahman appeared at her shoulder. "Helena, you're off shift. You need to go home." Into the ambulance and sat on the bench beside Marcelo's gurney. The doors closed and the siren wailed as they pulled onto the highway. Marcelo's eyes opened, finding hers in the dim red glow of the emergency lights. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I know." "Why did you?" Helena looked at his hands, still bandaged, still blistered from trying to claw his way out of the burning float. She thought about the yellow folder in his office, the one with the contractor paperwork. She thought about Patricia Lim's Instagram post and Doug Keller's real estate empire. She thought about the anonymous texts and the $15 million and the way Morrison had looked at her when she defended Marcelo. "Because Lucas asked me once why you stopped coming to his soccer games," she said. "And I told him it was because you were busy saving the company." And he said, "But who's saving Dad?" Marcelo's eyes glistened. He turned his head away, staring at the ambulance ceiling. "I don't deserve that kid." "No, you don't." They rode in silence for a while, the ambulance swaying as it took the curves toward Metro General. Then Marcelo spoke again, his voice barely audible over the siren. "I kept something from the divorce. Your mother wanted me to throw it out, but I couldn't." "What?" "The locket, the one I gave you on our first anniversary. You left it on the kitchen counter the day you moved out." Helena's breath, she remembered that locket. Gold, engraved with their initials. A photo of them on their wedding day tucked inside. She'd worn it every day for 10 years. And then one morning, after Marcelo missed Lucas's school play because of an emergency board meeting, she'd taken it off and left it on the counter like a discarded receipt. "Why did you keep it?" she asked. "Because I wanted to remember what I lost." Metro General's burn unit was a world away from the chaos of Sleepy Hollow's ER, hallways, specialized equipment, a team of doctors who moved with the precision of surgeons preparing for war. Helena stood outside the glass door of Marcelo's room, watching as they debrided his burns, applied fresh dressings, hooked him up to a ventilator as a precaution against his compromised airway. Her phone buzzed. "Sheriff Brennan." "Brennan. Got the warrant. Warehouse footage confirmed. Someone cloned Ed's keycard. And I found something else." And withdrew $50,000 from a personal account 3 days before the float fire. Cash. No paper trail. Helena's heart hammered. $50,000. The exact amount Marcelo had authorized for the float budget. Helena. Where is she now? Brennan. That's the problem. She's gone. Packed a suitcase, cleared out her desk, left her company phone on her chair. Security footage shows her leaving the Ricks building at 11 p.m. Helena looked through the glass at Marcelo, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the ventilator. Patricia had fled, which meant she knew they were onto her, which meant she was either scared or preparing for the next move. Helena. Check Doug Keller's properties. If she's running, she'll need a place to hide. and Keller has half a dozen rental units across the county. Brennan, already on it. I'll keep you posted. Helena pocketed her phone and pushed through the door into Marcello's room. The burn unit attending glanced up from his chart. Dr. Costa, your ex-husband is stable. We're keeping him sedated for the next 48 hours while the tissue heals, but his prognosis is good. Can I stay? The attending studied her. Family only. I'm his emergency contact. A pause, then a nod. Visiting hours end at 8 a.m., but for tonight, I'll make an exception. Helena pulled a chair to Marcello's bedside and sat. She reached for his hand, the one not covered in bandages, and held it. His skin was warm, his pulse steady beneath her fingers. She thought about the locket he'd kept, the one she'd abandoned, the one that held a photo of two people who'd believed love was enough to conquer quarterly earnings and missed anniversaries and the weight of a company built by a man's grandfather. I'm sorry, she whispered, for leaving the locket, for cutting you out, for telling Lucas you were too busy to care. Marcello didn't answer. The ventilator hissed, the monitors beeped, and Helena sat there, holding the hand of a man she'd once loved with everything she had, and wondered if it was possible to love someone again after you'd learned to live without them. Her phone buzzed, a new text, but this time it wasn't from the anonymous number. Ed Salazar. Found the yellow folder. Invoice for the electrical work solutions. Address, 447 Riverside Drive. That's Doug Keller's office building. Helena's blood went cold. The ghost contractor wasn't a ghost. It was a shell company registered to the same building where Doug Keller ran his real estate empire. Patricia and Keller hadn't just conspired to destroy the float. They'd documented it. And now, Helena had the proof. Helena left the burn unit at 3:47 a.m. and drove straight to the Rick's Foods office. Ed met her in the parking lot, the yellow folder clutched in his hand, his face gray with exhaustion. I've been going through the company financials last 6 months. $50,000 each time, total $150,000. For what? That's the thing. There's no work order, no project description, just a line item that says, facility upgrades. Helena opened the folder. The invoice for the float's electrical work was printed on Apex electric letterhead. Professional, official looking, complete with a business license number and a contractor signature. But when Helena pulled out her phone and searched the license number, it came back invalid. The contractor's signature belonged to a man who died 2 years ago. This is fraud, she said. Patricia hired a fake company, funneled money through it, and used it to sabotage the float. Why? Ed leaned against his car, rubbing his face. If she wanted to destroy the company, there are easier ways. Why rig the float? Why target Marcello specifically? Helena thought about the anonymous texts, the $15 million. The way Morrison had accused Marcello of cutting corners. Because she needed public opinion on her side. If the float fire looked like Marcello's fault, cheap contractors ignored safety protocols, then the town would turn against him. Rick's Foods shuts down, the board votes to sell, and Keller gets the land. And Patricia gets what? A cut of the sale? Or a job at Keller's company? Or both? Ed exhaled. We need to take this to the police. We will, but first, I need to find Patricia. She pulled up Doug Keller's property listings on her phone. 6 rental units, 3 commercial spaces, 1 mansion on the outskirts of town. She scrolled through the addresses until one caught her eye. 89 Lakeview Road. A secluded cabin near the reservoir, and a place you'd hide if you didn't want to be found. That's where she is, Helena said. Ed frowned. How do you know? Because Keller bought that property 3 months ago, during Marcello to sell. Helena texted Brennan the address and climbed into her car. Ed called after her. Helena, wait, this is dangerous. Call me if you hear anything. She drove toward the reservoir, her headlights cutting through the October darkness, narrowed. Trees pressing close on either side, their branches skeletal against the moonlit sky. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the anonymous number. Unknown number. Turn around, doctor. You've done enough. Let us finish this. Helena's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She didn't turn around. The cabin at 89 Lakeview Road sat at the end of a gravel driveway, its windows dark except for a single light glowing in the upstairs bedroom. Helena parked 50 yards away and killed the engine. Her phone showed 4:23 a.m. No service. No backup. Just her and whatever was waiting inside that cabin. She should have waited for Brennan. She knew that. But something about the anonymous texts, the way they'd known her schedule, her location, her weaknesses, made her think someone else was involved. Someone close. Helena grabbed her phone and walked toward the cabin. The gravel crunched under her feet, too loud in the pre-dawn silence. She climbed the porch steps and tried the door. Locked. She moved to the window and peered inside. Sheets. A laptop open on the coffee table, its screen glowing blue. And sitting at the laptop, her face illuminated by the cold light, was Patricia Lim. Helena knocked on the glass. Patricia's head snapped up, her eyes widening. For a moment, then Patricia stood, crossed to the door and opened it. Dr. Costa. Her voice was calm, almost amused. I was wondering when you'd show up. Helena stepped inside. Where's Keller? Gone. Left for the Cayman Islands 3 hours ago. Once the money clears, he'll wire my share. What money? Patricia smiled. The insurance payout. Trix Foods is covered for $10 million in property damage. When the float fire investigation concludes that Marcelo hired an unlicensed contractor, the insurance company will deny the claim. The company goes bankrupt, the land goes into foreclosure, and Keller buys it for pennies on the dollar. Helena's stomach twisted. You're going to let the company fail. All those jobs were going to disappear anyway. Marcelo's too sentimental to see it. The factory's outdated. The equipment's ancient. We lose money every quarter. I spent 2 years trying to convince him to sell, but he wouldn't listen, so I found someone who would. Keller. Keller saw the potential. Riverside location. Prime real estate. He offered me $2 million to make it happen. Helena took a step forward. You tried to kill Marcelo. Patricia's smile faded. I tried to save the company. Marcelo's the one who insisted on riding that float. If he'd stayed on the ground like a normal person, none of this would have happened. You rigged the wiring. You hired a fake contractor. You caused the fire. I caused an accident. There's a difference. Helena's phone buzzed. Service had returned. She glanced at the screen. A text from Brennan. ETA 10 minutes. Don't engage. Too late. Why did you text me? Helena asked. Why try to convince me to let Marcelo die? Patricia's expression shifted. Something almost like pity. Because I thought you were smart enough to see the opportunity. 15 million new rec center. New schools. All you had to do was nothing. And if I said no, then I'd make sure the investigation pointed to you, the scorned ex-wife who worked the ER shift, who had access to Marcelo's medical records, who could have tampered with his treatment. Patricia pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. I already have the emails drafted. Anonymous tips to the medical board. Screenshots of your texts with Ed. A witness statement from a nurse who'll swear she saw you delay his intubation. Helena's blood turned to ice. You're bluffing. Am I? Patricia showed her the phone. There, in stark black and white, were emails addressed to the state medical board, the hospital administrator, the local news station. Each one carefully worded to suggest Helena had acted with malice. Each one backed by falsified evidence, altered timestamps, fabricated witness statements, edited security footage. You can't prove I rigged the float, Patricia said. The contractor's dead, the company's a shell. Keller's in the Cayman Islands. But I can prove you had motive and opportunity to hurt Marcelo. And once I send these emails, your medical license is gone. Your reputation is gone. And Lucas grows up knowing his mother chose revenge over saving a life. Helena stared at the screen, her mind racing. Patricia had thought of everything. The conspiracy wasn't just about destroying, it was about having a scapegoat, someone to take the fall if the plan went wrong. And Helena, with her history with Marcelo, her access to his medical care, her bitterness over the divorce, was the perfect target. "What do you want?" Helena asked quietly. "Walk away, go back to the hospital. Tell the sheriff you were mistaken about the cabin, and when the insurance investigation concludes, keep your mouth shut." "And if I don't?" Patricia's finger hovered over the send button. "Then I send these emails, and you lose everything." Helena looked at Patricia, at the phone in her hand, at the cabin around them. She thought about Lucas, asleep with his pumpkin bucket. She thought about Marcelo, sedated in a burn unit bed. She thought about the yellow folder in her car, the one with the fake invoice, and she thought about something else. Something Patricia had said. "I already have the emails drafted." Drafted. Not was still bluffing. She hadn't pulled the trigger yet because she wasn't sure Helena would refuse. She was testing, probing, looking for leverage. Helena pulled out her own phone and opened the voice recorder app. She'd started recording the moment she walked into the cabin. Every word Patricia had said, the confession, the insurance fraud, the threat, was captured in a 20-minute audio file. "You're right," Helena said. "You can send those emails, and maybe the medical board will investigate. Maybe the hospital will suspend me. But you know what else will happen?" Patricia's smile wavered. "Sheriff Brennan will listen to this recording, and he'll hear you confess to conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. And then he'll trace the burner phone you used to text me, and he'll find the financial records linking you to Keller, and he'll arrest you before you ever see that $2 million. Patricia's face went pale. "You're bluffing, am I?" Helena played the recording. Patricia's voice filled the cabin crisp and clear. "I caused an accident. It's your word against mine. You could have edited that, fabricated it." "Maybe. But I also have this." Helena pulled out her phone and showed Patricia the email from Ed, the one with the Apex Electric invoice, the fake contractor signature, the business license that didn't exist. Ed's been digging through the company financials all night. He found 3 payments to Apex Electric, $150,000, and when the police trace that money, they'll find it went straight into an account linked to Doug Keller. Patricia's hand shook. "That doesn't prove I was involved." "No, but this does." Helena opened another file. Excited to close the Riverside land deal. Big things coming for Sleepy Hollow. The timestamp, October 2nd, 1 day before the security breach. "You celebrated the deal before the float fire even happened," Helena said. "Which means you knew it was going to fail. Which means you planned it." Patricia stared at the screen. Her finger moved toward the send button, then stopped. She looked at Helena, at the recording app, at the evidence piling up like kindling around a fire. "You can send those emails," Helena said. "But the moment you do, I send this recording to Brennan, and then we'll see." Crunching outside. Headlights flashed through the window. Sheriff Brennan's cruiser pulled into the driveway, followed by 2 more in her hand, and clattered to the floor. Patricia in the cabin's living room, while Helena forwarded the recording, the emails, and the financial documents to his department phone. 2 deputies searched the cabin and found Patricia's laptop, still open to the fake email drafts. Another deputy called the Cayman Islands authorities and requested they detain Doug Keller at the airport. "We'll need your statement," Brennan said to Helena. "And Ed's, and anyone else who can corroborate the timeline." "You'll have it." Helena looked at Patricia, slumped in the chair with her hands cuffed behind her back. "Why did you do it? You had a good job, a 6-figure salary. Why risk everything for $2 million? Patricia laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Because I spent 10 years watching Marcelo pour money into a dying company while I did the actual work. I saved Rick's Foods 3 times. 3 times. And every time he took the credit. The board loved him. The investors loved him, and I was just the CFO who crunched the numbers. So you decided to destroy him. I decided to take what I was owed." Brennan led Patricia out to the cruiser. Helena stood on the porch, watching the red and blue lights pulse against the trees. The sun was rising now, pale orange light spilling over the reservoir, turning the water to glass. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. "Metro General Burn Unit. Mr. Duarte is awake and asking for you. Helena drove back to the city, her hand still shaking from adrenaline. 15 a.m. and found Marcelo sitting up in bed, the ventilator removed, his voice hoarse but clear. Helena? She crossed to his bedside. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Ed called. He told me about Patricia, about the cabin. Marcelo looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed. You could have walked away. Let Brennan handle it. I know. Why didn't you? Helena sat in the chair beside his bed. Because someone needed to save you, and it wasn't going to be the board, or the investors, or the company. Marcelo reached for her hand. His grip was weak, his palm still bandaged, but he for missing Lucas's games, for choosing the company over you. I know. Can I see him, Lucas? I know I don't deserve it, but he's been asking about you. Every night before bed. Is Dad okay? Does he know I scored a goal? I've been lying to him for 3 years, telling him you're too busy. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared you'd hurt him the way you hurt me. Marcelo's eyes glistened. I won't, I swear. Helena squeezed his hand. Then prove it. By noon, the story had broken across every news outlet in the county. CF billionaire CEO targeted in insurance fraud plot. Reporters camped outside the hospital, trying to get us. The board called an emergency meeting. Ed Salazar was named interim CFO. And Marcelo, still recovering from his burns, issued a statement from his hospital bed. Rick's Foods will not be sold. The factory will remain in Sleepy Hollow. And every employee who lost their job in the last quarter will. This company was built by my grandfather on the principle that loyalty matters. And I intend to honor that. Helena watched the press conference from the hallway, her arms crossed. Marcelo looked tired, his face still streaked with soot, his hands still bandaged. But his voice was steady. This was the man she'd married, the one who believed in something bigger than profit margins. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Mommy. Lucas wants to come see his dad. Can I bring him? Helena smiled. Helena. Yes. 3 months later, Helena stood in the kitchen of her townhouse, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Outside, snow dusted the streets of Sleepy Hollow, turning the town into a postcard. Lucas sat at the table, finishing his homework, his pumpkin bucket still sitting on the shelf above the fridge. A relic of the night everything changed. Helena opened it to find Marcelo standing on the porch, his hands healed now, the scars faint pink lines across his palms. He held a small box wrapped in silver paper. For Lucas, he said. I promised him I'd be at his soccer tournament next week. Thought I'd bring an early present. Helena stepped aside to let him in. Lucas looked up from his homework, his face splitting into a grin. Dad! Marcelo crossed to the table and handed him the box. Lucas tore it open to reveal a new pair of soccer cleats, the kind he'd been asking for since September. These are awesome. Lucas threw his arms around Marcelo's waist. Thank you. Helena watched from the doorway, her chest tight. 3 months ago, she would have said this was impossible. Marcelo showing up, keeping his promises, being present. But here he was, sitting at her kitchen table, helping Lucas with his math homework, laughing at a joke she didn't quite catch. Later, after Lucas went upstairs to play video games, Marcelo lingered in the hallway. I know this doesn't fix everything. The divorce, the years I missed, but I want to try. If you'll let me. Helena looked at him, at the man who'd kept her locket, at the man who'd chosen the company over his family and then nearly died for it, at the man who was standing in her kitchen asking for a second chance. Lucas needs his father, she said, and maybe I need to remember who you were before the company took over. And who was that? Someone who believed loyalty mattered. Marcelo smiled. A small, quiet thing that reminded her of their first date, when he'd shown up with wildflowers and a nervous laugh. I'd like to be that person again. Then prove it. He nodded. And then, before she could stop him, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the locket. The gold was tarnished now, the engraving worn, but it was still there. H+M, forever. He held it out to her. I'm not asking you to wear it, but I wanted you to have it back. Because it belongs to you, not to the past. Helena took the locket, her fingers closing around the cool metal. She didn't put it on. Not yet. But she didn't give it back either. 4 months after the float fire, Patricia Lim pled guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and arson. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal Cayman Islands and faced similar charges. Opened the factory with new safety protocols, and the town of Sleepy Hollow held a memorial for the children injured in the fire, a small plaque near the covered bridge that read, "In memory of courage and truth." Helena returned to the ER, her medical life. She still got anonymous texts sometimes, spam, phishing scams, the usual digital noise, but none of them made her heart race the way they had that October night. And Marcelo? He kept his promises. He showed up to Lucas's soccer tournament. He called every Tuesday and Thursday. He brought coffee on Saturday mornings and helped with homework on Sunday afternoons. He didn't ask to move back in. He didn't push for reconciliation. He just showed up, consistently, quietly, the way he should have done years ago. One evening, as Helena walked Lucas to Marcelo's car for their weekend visit, Lucas turned to her. "Mom, do you think Dad's a hero?" Helena thought about the float fire, the burn, the anonymous texts, the way Marcelo had grabbed her wrist and said, "It wasn't an accident." "I think he's trying to be," she said, "and that's what matters." Lucas nodded and climbed into the car. Marcelo waved from the driver's seat, and Helena waved back. She stood on the porch watching them drive away, the locket heavy in her pocket. She still didn't know if she'd ever wear it again, but she was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, loyalty did matter, and second chances were worth the risk. What would you have done in Helena's place? Would you have given Marcelo a second chance, or walked away for good? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. See you in the next one.